Nic, welcome to Focus on the Fun Stuff. Thank you very much for being here. We don't have lots and lots of time today, and I want to get stuck right in because today is going to be the episode to help any business owner understand how to improve employee happiness in the workplace, isn't it, ultimately? So, Nic, thank you so much for being here today.
That's okay.
When I was doing my research on you, I saw that you are called the statistician with a soul.
There's a lot of syllables in there.
There is so many I's and T's, and now it's like it's the perfect description for you, because so you were a data analyst. That was your previous career, wasn't it? And I don't know if you just want to do a quick recap that you were in the think tanks, just leading up to the creation of the software Friday Pulse. Just tell us how you got to that point, and we can dive in.
Yeah, I'm a statistician by trade, and I've always been interested in quality of life, well-being, latterly happiness, and how do you measure it? And I started off doing very complicated data indexes in the 90s. And then in 2001, I joined a think tank in London it became to found their wellbeing program. We didn't know that at the beginning. And I wanted to measure wellbeing. It was a word coming onto public policy. And so we started doing work on that. And before long, we were advising the Blair and then the Cameron government about how to measure wellbeing. And I did the TED talk and all of that in 2010. And
it's always had like 2.3 million views or something.
Yeah, it's well over 2 anyway. Yeah, and which is for a dry thing on basically an alternative to GDP is quite a lot, I think, actually. But it was called the Happy Planet Index because basically, for me, the way nations should measure progress is whether they can create good lives that don't cost the earth. So can people be happy and sustainable? So that was the idea of that index. And then when I'd done that, I did quite a lot of public speaking because, TED Talk lets you. And then I just thought, actually, I want to do something useful. And I thought, well, I'm just as critical of how businesses measure employee experience as I was governments measuring well-being. So could I do that? And so then I started working on work, how you measured well-being, and then it became happiness. And that's how ultimately Friday Pulse, the business that I formed, was founded, yeah.
And that was around 16 years ago, was it, Friday Pulse now?
There's a sort of various starts to it. So probably my first work on wellbeing at work was 16 years ago, but launched the company 2012, and then it's morphed and changed names and various things since, but yeah.
Got it. And for anybody that doesn't know, I just need to say that Friday Pulse, we are massive advocates at MyPA. I'm not being paid to say this. Like, we've used it for maybe 18 months now, 2 years. As we've grown from one size to another, it has been instrumental in us understanding the happiness at work. 'Cause it gets more difficult as you get bigger and you get less connected from people. And it's been really key in that. So I honestly think for any size business, it is fantastic. And it's a very straightforward piece of software, but it does a lot for me. So it gives us a lot of data that we understand. So Friday Pulse helps any leadership team almost heat map and understand where teams are at risk of burnout, where they're happy. Is that fair to say? It's a good.
Yeah, it is.
How would you describe it?
It's one of those things which is a sort of hard-fought simplicity.
From
a design perspective, as you know, when I started out, I'm sorry to all the people that did my first surveys. They were way too long. I kind of had to work it out. And then you start to realize actually what you want is what I call the good-bad signal. And happiness is a good-bad signal. When things are going well, we feel happy. When they're not, we don't. And that's at a biological, physical level in us. But you can capture that in data by asking people regularly. I mean, you're presumably using the weekly tool, aren't you?
Yes.
And so we have a weekly, the monthly, and a quarterly. But the weekly tool will just ask you, how happy were you at work this week? And then you get a sort of line that goes up and down. You immediately pick up if a team's struggling.
Yeah.
So it's really to create that very, very simple. Then you have to do, that's the sort of check-in. And then you have to do a check-up. Sometimes you do a deeper dive and measure the culture of teams.
Yes.
So we have this sort of combination of things. But I call the methodology measure, meet, repeat. As in, you measure it, you should meet and talk about the results, and then you repeat it, and that's really at its simplest what it is.
Which is what we do at MyPA. We measure it, meet, repeat, which is fantastic. So it is really simple, and then it asks the team members from 1 to 5, how was your working week? So from having Friday Pulse for so long, Nic, we start to dive into, like, what do you in unhappy teams? Are there like recurring themes that businesses do wrong in terms of they think? I know we talked about that you're writing a book at the moment, and one of the chapters is called No Pizzas, Ping Pongs or Parties.
Yeah, it's in draft at the moment. Actually, I think I've just I think I've just renamed that section.
It spoke to me because I remember I said to you, we do pizzas, we've got a ping pong table with cobwebs on it, and we have parties. So.
Yeah. Well, I've got a whole section, so I do a lot about what's good about it, and then I thought, well, I better do the bad and the ugly too.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's one of the things I sort of make a joke about. Yeah, is ping pong pizzas and parties, and that ping pong tables are quite funny. I met this tech entrepreneur in the States. Really liked him. I think he had about 120 in his company, and he said, "Oh yeah, I bought a ping pong table, and if I walk past it and it's empty, I think it's a waste of money. If I walk past it and someone's on it, I think they're not working." So he said it's a lose-lose situation. and you know, it's a certain, you know, you can think about. I mean, forced happiness is terrible. I mean, particularly for us Brits, we just really do not respond well being told to have fun. And so I think it's much more what I'm interested in is that deeper happiness that comes from really being engaged in your work, really enjoying it, you know, where you're achieving goals. And there is a very serious type of happiness, you know, which comes from that. And in fact, I sometimes talk about there being two different types of happiness. There's one which is more about maintaining stability. And so, you know, it's about feeling calm. It's about relationships. And then there's one about driving change. And so enthusiasm, you know, interesting things, they're like driving you forward to goals, you know, whereas relaxing and chilling are helping you restore. So they're quite different, but they're all sort of happiness in a way. And actually what you need is a balance. Mm-hmm. And of course, work prefers the striving positive emotions, the ones strivings. But if they don't respect the ones which sustain people, they're going to get into burnout and all sorts of other problems. So, you know, so it's about, everything is about a balance, and it's very dynamic. You know, you can't just be happy and you've got there.
Yeah. It's going moving. To flux and change. Yeah. And so is that like the step number one of happiness in the workplace, like the meaning or the feeling that people get from the work that they're doing, whether they're progressing, or is that, would you say?
So I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about happiness, you know, that it's a state you get to rather than it being dynamic,
right.
That it's somehow stupid to be happy, you know, that you must be, you know, stupid, you know, you're not intelligent. It's much more intelligent to be, I don't know, melancholic or miserable or something. I don't know. And also there's very selfish. It's not. It's actually very social. So teams form the real basis of it. So I think there's some misunderstandings about happiness.
Okay.
And then I think, what drives it at work really is two things, which is inspiring people and treating them fairly. You know, those are the two biggest things that, in a sense, you know, helping people understand what they can accomplish and treating them fairly and respectfully. There are lots of other factors as well. I mean, I talk about there being 5 ways, which is connect, be fair, empower, challenge, inspire. But the two that most drive it are inspire and be fair.
Interesting. And so just with Friday Pulse itself, so this weekly question that goes out basically generates a report from it. And then you do the big quarterly, which is lots, 15 questions, is it, that the team gets asked. So anybody that's using it or is going to use it, in terms of the weekly reports, do you intend that to be like a leadership team discussion or a company discussion, so say like a particular department is scoring lower one week, is that more of a leadership team discussion, or is it an open forum with the team to understand? So
we are very open, transparent with the data, and the area teams shape our experience the most.
Yeah.
Who we work with regularly, and by team I kind of mean the unit of 10 or under people that you work with. Mm-hmm. Some people call a team 50 people, but I sort of mean a smaller one than that. Like you'd have a soccer team.
Yeah.
And so that team that you work with are going to shape your experience the most. Obviously the team leader too, but also your colleagues. And if you work with someone that's a misery, you know, it's draining. Mm-hmm. And then you work with someone that's, some people talk about radiators and drains, don't they? You probably know that expression.
Yeah, yeah.
Some people give off warmth, and it's much nicer to work with. They're collaborative, they're smart, and they're engaged in their work. So there's, sort of a resonance and a contagion at a team level. And also you're working together to meet goals. So they're the people so teams is really where it's at. So I've designed a tool that it's for teams to talk about predominantly. Yes, it creates data for senior leadership. Yes, senior leadership sometimes need to offer more resources, support to teams so that they can rise to the challenges that they have. They could be understaffed. They could be, very often people go, oh, well, the team leader isn't good enough. Well, have you given them any training?
Yeah.
Have you promoted them for technical skills rather than people skills? Well, then that's your fault. People need to lead teams, and people can learn people skills. So if you want to promote someone with good technical skills, fine, either find a technical path for them, or at least have the decency to train them on listening skills, on how to be coaching rather than prescriptive.
Yeah.
These things matter. These are the essential skills, and yet, 9 times out of 10, people are promoted for technical or length of service rather than people skills.
Totally get that. So on the coaching piece and getting people better, is there anything that you recommend or prescribe, or whether it's books or anything that?
So there's a whole world of coaching, isn't there, out there?
Yeah.
And I think there's lots of models. What I try and do with data is to give the team leader data every week on their team. So like, okay, how happy they were, but what's going well for the team? Okay, because we too often rush from one challenge to the next. We don't even stop and take a breath. We don't go, good job. We don't go, thanks. We don't say thank you enough. And team leaders can go an awful long way by shouting out what's going well in their teams and appreciating them, and then dealing with anything that they're stuck on and frustrated. And of course, all of those processes are about feedback. And I think we are dreadfully nervous about giving people feedback. But feedback is helpful to learn. So in our tool, we feedback like what's going well for people, what isn't. But the team leader themselves needs to be good at giving feedback and listening. And feedback doesn't mean you tell people what you do. It's sort of like, when you do this, what are you trying to achieve? How can I help you do it? It's working with the employee on that, with their team. And that's a skill that, frankly, is one, coachable, teachable, and two, and they should do, because that's actually where your productivity gain is going to be.
Yeah, totally. And in terms of team dynamics, and what have you learned from COVID and working from home? And is there any data that you look at or work on in terms of the happiness or the productiveness of teams working from home or in the office? Or is there anything there?
The data that I've seen is very messy. There is data. I think there's some big things. Firstly, 50% of people can't work from home.
50%?
Yeah, in the UK. I mean, we work instead of desk-based work, so we assume everyone can, but firstly, half people can't. Secondly, what's the right balance? Okay, yeah. And of course, it's going to be different. Have you got kids?
No,
but you're sort of, you're at the age where you could do, and it's like people who've got kids want to work from home because they've got other responsibilities, or but younger people need to learn. So how do they learn from the people before them if they don't meet with them? Yes. And so there are these tensions about it. And, it's not you can't say working from home all good, working from the office all good. It's going to be different. I think that businesses will deviate, and some will have all in the office, some will have all remote, some will have blended. And I think it will find its way because it's a complex area. I would say that I think that fully remote is bad for people's mental health.
Yeah.
I think the evidence on that's pretty clear.
Yeah.
And I think that people mistakenly think home is a happy word, therefore I'm happier working from home. And they probably miss their colleagues more than they do, even though they annoy them or whatever. But it's like actually interacting with people is very, very good for us.
Yeah.
So I think that fully remote should be the exception, is where I would go.
No, I totally agree. And you've hit the nail on the head for us in that we have predominantly a very, not very young, but a younger team, like mid-20s. Yeah. And so for them, that kind of learning piece was missing when we had to work from home in COVID. And also just the community piece for them. A lot of them might be single, they're going out, after work drinks. It's like that whole community piece makes the rest of it a lot better, more productive, more meshed together. Totally.
Absolutely. And even those sort of introverts who think they don't want it actually do better for it. So I think there's something to, and if you are fully remote, then okay, you have to set up things which I think work well with that. I would have a quarterly offsite altogether where you all meet at least once a quarter. I would have regular Zooms, Teams, whatever you use, meetings just to talk about how you all are, so that you get some of that community. But just meeting people in the flesh occasionally. Now, of course, that actually does affect hiring policies, because people sort of went, I can hire anyone in the world, and so you can have people in Hyderabad or in Dublin or something, rather than, and then that's a problem. And I'm not sure. You have to make it work, but it's something is lost in that.
Yeah, totally. And what does the data look like in terms of do you see that employee happiness overall increasing or decreasing? Because I almost feel like the conversation has probably never been as open as it is now about happy workplaces and feeling heard, but also psychologically safe to speak. And is there any data in UK businesses on how they are performing with?
So I've got data from before COVID and after that I can compare, and we were less happy after COVID. And it's now a year out of date, that data. But to get population-based surveys, which are good statistically, is expensive. So I only do them every couple of years. The labour force survey, other big panel surveys, actually shows the UK has been getting less happy over the last 5-8 years. But we've got a new government now. You never know. No, we actually, UK, particularly more than Europe, has been has been taking longer to recover. We have been the least reluctant nation to go back into the office in Europe.
Interesting, really.
Yeah, so I don't know if they're related. It's quite difficult to know if they're causal, but I think the UK hasn't been feeling very good about stuff. But we're talking about relatively marginal effects here.
Yeah.
Most people will be getting on as normal. When you talk about a slump, it might be 74% of people saying they're okay rather than 78%.
Okay.
So you do see it in the data, and the effects are real, but most people will be immune to them. But I wouldn't say that we're getting happier in the UK. I wouldn't say we're getting happier at work. That's probably my statistical opinion.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I do feel like there's more, like the working from home thing, that kind of the lid came off it in COVID, didn't it? Because it just wasn't even a thing really before. I know it was for some businesses, but it wasn't a part of the job description like it is now for most businesses, that you can hybrid work and so I feel like happiness, working from home, all of these things are now talked about a lot more or happening, and yet I don't feel like it's necessarily equating to a really happy workforce.
Yeah, what I think is some organisations get it absolutely brilliant. There's just this huge variety, and I think the businesses that we work with are the sort of pioneers that are taking it seriously, because that's why they're using us. So in some ways, we the larger companies we work with, we see there's a lot of the small ones are really quite happy, and they're really on it, and some of the larger ones have got a bigger spread, but they. So it's difficult to know, exactly whether the UK is getting back, but yeah. You mentioned before about that Friday Pulse, like the data is shared within a team, and you mentioned also that there are obviously lots of different factors contributing to the success of a team. It might be that there are players on the team whose personalities are more pessimistic than optimistic, and would you have any advice for, say, like a manager or a team leader? Because it's almost like so if a team's trending downwards on happiness, to understand that, is it all the things that the company can affect, or is it one particular personality that's contagious, as you said? Like, how have you got any advice on how that's kind of understood? So I think that teams shape us the most. That's not necessarily the colleagues in the team. I think it's a lot to do with how well the team gel and how well they're managed.
Right.
And, I think the goal is to have happy and successful teams.
Yeah.
No good having happy, unsuccessful ones. They go out of business. Having unhappy, successful ones, they drive you out of the business. So you really want the two things together. And that really is built slowly, like trust, relationships at the core of it. As I said, appreciation is really important. Really helping people know what the goals are, whether they're playing to their strengths, how they can get towards them. So that's the whole sort of setting goals, feedback, accomplishment piece. And so that's the sort of striving piece, and the sort of bit about maintaining stability is much more about appreciating people, respecting their work-life balance. You know, we have a lot of organizations that will try and get as much free overtime out of you as possible. That is, that's a short-term win and a medium-term problem, you know. So it's really, really about those things. And it's about, I mean, team leaders are under so much pressure.
Yeah.
You know, that it's not an easy job. Relationships aren't easy.
No.
They are wonderful, but, you know...
It's also a skill, isn't it, to have them?
Yeah, it's a skill to have them. But, you know, I would expect every single listener to this that their most painful experience in life has been relational. You know, they're not easy. And running a team is not an easy job. And yet, as I said, you promote people without giving them any training. And we don't give them time budgets. How much time budget do you give your team leaders?
What do you mean by that?
As in, okay, what percentage of their week should be spent in looking after the team, giving one-to-ones, sitting down with team members? You know, if you've got a team of 5 people, I think you should be spending at least 20, if not 25% of your week with your team, talking about it, not doing your own work. So you might be doing strategic work or something, but actually just with your team, supporting them on what they're doing. So bringing them together, having one-to-ones with them, checking in with them, coaching them as they need to. It's a lot of time. And if you're doing that on top of your own job, on top of all your strategic stuff, that's why most managers work 6-7 hours of overtime unpaid each week. It's an extra day because they're not given the time. And I think that, you know, organizations need to wake up to the fact that you're paying the team leader to get the best out of the team. So you can't expect 100% of what they were doing before and them do that. You've got to give them at least 20-25% budget, time budget to do that. And then, okay, you turn up and you do a one-to-one. But if you just sit there and go, oh, how are you? Have you had a nice week? Yeah, it's nice. But you should do that in the first 2 minutes, and then you should get to, okay, what you stuck on, what are you working on, what are you doing well, how can you do this, well, how can I support you, what resources do I need from you? And that is what a team leader is about, and people love it. You know, people go, oh, we don't want it. Actually, it's nothing better than rising to challenges and achieving them. So there's no way that the two things need to trade off on each other. You know, actually they build on each other, happiness and success. And you know, I mean, boredom is so much worse than stress. Being bored, oh yeah, 4 times worse. Sorry, I'll give you a statistical answer, but yeah, it's 4 times worse than stress. So if you look at the way the indicators stress and boredom interact with happiness and success, boredom is far worse because it's like, it's a joy killer, isn't it, to be bored?
Yeah.
So, and to be lost at work, and I think a lot of us have spent times at work where we don't know where we're going. We do need guidance, and we don't need to be told, but we need to have someone that can help us find our way. And that's really the spirit that I think it really has to be in.
Yeah. And in terms of feeling lost, just to kind of clarify on that, do you mean, is it important that they fully know like what 100% looks like for their role to do it well? Or do you mean more of what progression looks like? Or because I often think for small businesses that can be difficult when there's not necessarily all of these career paths, to different places because they're growing and they're still figuring it out. So when you say lost, is it just more about people really know how to do their job really well and are happy at it?
I think it can be all of the above.
Really? Yeah.
I mean, career progression is such a difficult one because it's changing so much, isn't it? Even the larger organisations have removed layers and what does it mean? But I think that as a general rule, organisations don't give enough internal career paths to people, and they lose people because of it. And they seem okay with that, and that seems to me a bit daft, really, because it costs a lot to recruit somebody.
Yes, it does.
From many organisations, it's only in the second year of employment that they're actually getting a return on recruiting somebody. So if they're only staying...
second year?
I mean, it depends. But yeah, if you think how much, right, you recruit somebody, you obviously do that. How much does it cost you to recruit somebody?
Yeah.
30% of their salary?
Yeah.
Do you think? I don't know. How many weeks of stress does that put on you and on the team leader?
Team leader, training them up, bringing them into the business,
onboarding
the values.
Them. And then the other team members had to pick up the slack, or maybe you have to take on a temp, or... So when you add up those costs, they're quite big. And then people take time to get up to speed, don't they? They don't hit that, rarely. But rarely do they hit the ground running at the beginning.
Totally.
They take time. So maybe it takes them 6 months to get up to speed. So that's 3 months lost value. So you add it all up and it can be nearly a year. It's actually much bigger than you think it is. And people sort of go, oh, yeah, it's fine, recruit somebody, and it's like, yeah. And that, that's more pressure on the team leader again.
Yes.
And then they've got to integrate that person. They've got new personalities. Then everyone's got to get used to it. So there's so many ways it affects it. So stability is one of the key outcomes of happy teams. They're more stable, which is great for the team. It's great for the team's clients or suppliers or customers because they know where they are. They're coming back to the same person. So we undervalue stability sometimes. That's really important. So where were we at the beginning? Something about recruitment, but it's like it costs a lot more than people realise. And of course, the unhappy quit as well. So.
Yes, yeah. We were about progression in the business, and how just when it can be difficult for small businesses to necessarily have progression. Just having a very clear career path.
It is difficult. I mean, I think that recognising with bonuses, financial increases is one way, and trying to give people more responsibility within their own work without a traditional career path, I think works for fine. Actually, people should be, in my opinion, wary of going to big companies. In my data, people tend to be less happy in big companies than small ones.
Really? And what do you consider a big company? Just is it like 100 people plus?
Over 250 is where the break really comes.
Right.
But also really small ones under 20 are happier. But I'm not quite sure, not quite as confident. No, I'm pretty confident the data because I see it across multiple nations. But sort of 5 to 10 people as a business is probably the happiest size business. But obviously businesses need to grow, and there's a real cut off over about 150, 200 where it gets quite complicated. And it also gets quite complicated over about 45, 50. Suddenly you have to start introduce systems. There's sort of scaling up things, and somewhere around about 50 people is a point. Somewhere around 150, 200 is another point where I think it becomes quite difficult.
Yeah, it is. It is a difficult thing. I mean, we know from experience at MyPA when we were at 10 staff, 15 staff, all great. And then as we went to 2025, we then realised we needed systems and other ways to track happiness. Because you're right, like when you're at that 10 people, like we were all sat around the same desk, we all knew each other inside out. It's just a very different dynamic to lots of new people in the team. Yeah. So at Friday Pulse, the team is 7 or 8 people, is it?
Yeah. We've been up and down. Actually, I think we recruited ahead of growth too much, and I actually realised we could be more efficient as much as anything. Yeah.
And we were when we had a chat last week. We were talking. So at the moment, you're writing a book.
Yeah.
Have you got a title for the book?
I have got a title for the book. It's called "Happiness is a Serious Business."
Oh, nice. I like it.
Yeah.
So you are writing the book, and we did have a chat around how you had to, you've gone through your own journey in Friday Pulse of extricating yourself from being in the business to be able to actually lead it and do the stuff you should do, which is writing the book.
Yeah. I'm an accidental businessman. I don't know.
I feel like most of us are, though.
Probably.
Accidental.
I had an idea and I couldn't resist it. And, and I came out more sort of research background and big ideas. And I'm not, I can say all those things about setting goals and everything like that. It's not my strength. My strength is having an idea and trying to communicate it. So we decided, me and Moses Martin, about 6-9 months ago, the book was taking me so long. I've been over it so many times that actually what I really do is do nothing but the book. And it's amazing how my writing has improved with that. The other thing that's really, really improved my writing is I deleted all my news apps.
Oh, wow. Really?
After the US election, I got so cross. And in the last month, I have so much calmer by not reading the news.
How interesting.
I don't know. I've got the week, once a week, I'll read that. So I'm not uninformed. But I think I was getting myself distracted. And my writing has got a lot better than just being calmer. So actually, that's only, 6 weeks ago, or 5 weeks ago. And I've written probably twice the rate as I was writing.
No way.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So just having that time to...
Such a tick, the news, isn't it? It's like, oh, what's going on? And it's so annoying. And I just think it was really, really distracting me. So it's quite a lesson to myself about, something I've often preached, which is, don't get distracted. And I was doing it myself. Yeah.
Yeah. And because now you literally have whole mornings, afternoons, just as soon as you get up, you're like, I'm on the book.
Yeah, I've got 1 day a week where I'm available for the team. Well, anything they need in at a time, I'd obviously do it. But I turn Slack off, and I mean, writing isn't easy for me. I don't know. I don't think it's actually easy for anybody. But, I have to pace around. And sort of, and then suddenly, and it's like, like last night, we watched something on telly and I was just cleaning out the kitchen and I suddenly went, oh, that's an idea. And I had to go to my laptop and write 3 bullet points because I actually have to write them down as I had them, the ideas, otherwise they go.
Otherwise you're like, what was that I was thinking about last night?
Yeah.
Which
and when the book gets to the stage it's now where it's on the 6th rewrite, the 6th draft, it's a difficult process. You're now trying to link, that was the chapter, that's in that chapter, how can I link them together? And there's things like that suddenly come to you. So it's a difficult process, but I think I'm a couple of weeks away from having a full draft.
Wow.
Yeah,
so exciting.
Before Christmas.
Yeah. And so the team at Friday Pulse then, what does your structure look like? Do you work in an office centrally together?
No, so my business partner has a basement where we all meet once a week. So,
okay.
So we can all fit in there. Actually 2 in Manchester, so they only come down sometimes. But yeah, so it's so we do try and do well. Actually, now I'm only doing that once every 2 weeks personally
because you've got the book and everything.
But and I think some face to face is very good, and we know each other well.
Yeah,
we've been all of these folk have been with us since pre-COVID. So and that is in some ways. There's a sort of stock of sort of social capital in a team that you build up, which gets disrupted when you bring in someone new. So if you've got stability of a team, then actually you can probably stretch things about working from home more.
Totally
So there's all sorts of. I mean, basically, there's room for a variety of different ways. Like we've all got different personalities, we've got different strengths. I think organisations and teams can be happy in different ways, and secondly, experiment. I mean, there is no one way. Try things. Do they work for you? Great. You have to watch out for in and out group things. So, if you've got young and, you were saying, to go out for a drink and everything like that. Some people don't drink, some have young children. You have to work out about how you do that inclusively.
Yes.
And I think that's easily forgotten and creates in and out groups which are normally bad for creativity because you start getting cliques, and actually it's really good to have different views in creative discussions. So you just have to watch out for some of those things.
Yeah, no, totally. Again, like we've kind of lived this journey of when all of a sudden you go from 10 to 20 to 30 and groups naturally form that have got different interests. And it is like a work in progress to understand how to keep all of those things moving along together, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm sure that, from all of the data and everything, just in terms of managing the culture of a business. I think the mistake we made was that we never assumed anything would change as we got bigger.
Yeah.
We just thought, it's my PA, we have a good time, we're all like working on the same thing. And then as the team got bigger and bigger and, leaders' input got diluted, because that happens as well, like how I would do things, then people that have just joined have no idea how I do things. And the biggest thing I did learn from our growth from like 2020 onwards is that culture has to be systemized and a trackable part of your business, just like everything else, like sales, like marketing. We track all of that, and I think culture often gets left.
So you're a pioneer.
You've
but it's that's exactly what I say. It's like everyone talks about culture. One, they don't know what it means, but then so how do you measure it? But we've got to measure it if you want to, but you do need to track it, because if your culture will stop you achieving your goals if it's bad. I mean, and not all cultures are good, and they've got blind spots. So so that's really the deeper dive that we do once a quarter. And if people come to use the platform, we always suggest you start with what we call a culture profile of your organisation. You measure, how happy teams are and why they are, and reflect on that for a bit, and then kickstart. So you probably started straight in with the weekly, which is what we used to do. Yeah, but now we tend to say, let's start with the deeper dive, and then settle that, then go into weekly or monthly. Yeah.
And just on the quarterly survey that you do, like for my own knowledge and anybody that is using it or wants to start using it, so this quarterly survey is the 15 questions, and it's things like, what's your pride at the company, what's your work relationships, all these different really great questions. And then the results of that questionnaire, is that then team shared? Is that how you would go about that?
Yeah, so there's things for us individually to learn. So when you first do the survey, you get a report about your own happiness at work. That might not have been there when you started.
No, it doesn't.
And then the team gets a report, and then an organisation gets an overview. So there were security rights with the system.
Yeah.
So you would have an overview of the whole company, but that wouldn't be appropriate for everybody. But so we tend to give people a vertical view, me, my team, the whole organisation. So they look up, they don't look sideways, they don't see other people's scores, they don't see other teams' scores. If you manage 5 teams, you'd see the 5 teams you do it. So that's the way we tend to do it, and it acts for the senior leaders as there are patterns at an organisational level. The organisation might be bad at feedback, or it might be bad at. So you can see patterns across sectors. So for example, teaching profession, high meaning, low fairness.
Right.
Yeah. And then you can see professions, creative agencies do well, actually pretty well across them, but you can see things like professional services, actually they can do challenge really well, but they don't do meaning so well or something, so you can see patterns across it, and that gives you things to act on. So if you're a team leader and you feel your team isn't, quite flying, it will give you clues about what you can do. And and it'll be different.
Yeah. And it does, from experience, it does help and then open up really great conversations with the team, either as, if you have a team meeting together or individually. Yeah. Because it gives such great information around the heat maps of what's scoring lower, to then start to just it's just me and you, let's just have a conversation. How do you feel about that? And just, you can then focus on the right parts, can't you, to understand what you can do better to work on.
So we try and create a structure which is fixed, that allows everything to emerge out of it. Mm-hmm. That's the idea. It's to reflect back about it. And the newest thing we've just created, which we probably would have pushed you only a couple last week, is the risk report. So have you got one? Did you get one last week?
I don't think we did, but you did mention it.
Talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. I always like the good. Actually, people are quite motivated by the bad, and learning that really. And so we actually now create risk indicators, like our teams at risk of underperformance, of burnout, or flight risk. And there's slightly different drivers, so it creates quite a nuance to the heat map that you can see different teams at risk. So that's really to get the attention of senior leaders, that they shouldn't ignore team happiness, because some of them just focus on the business goals. So it's to say, this is about your business goals, because it is.
That happy teams, it just makes everything so much easier. And you said to me the other day on it, who wants to lead an unhappy team? Nobody does. It's just like trudging through mud, isn't it? So
it's like, it's terrible leading an unhappy team. And you're probably getting squeezed from above and below, and that's where team leadership is hard. Push both ways, and if the team is kicking and screaming below you, it's not much fun.
Yeah, totally. Nic, I know you've got travel constraints next, and so I'm going to let you go. But I just wanted to reconfirm that Friday Pulse is fantastic. I think for any size team, like if you're in the 10 team or if you're 50 or 100, we love it, and I recommend it to all of our clients. So it is really simple to find, fridaypulse.com, isn't
Correct,
it? That's where to find it. Nic, you've been fantastic. It's been, I think, a real eye-opener for business owners that want to just try and understand if they're having that problem with, I don't think everybody feels quite happy, but I'm not sure what to do about it. Friday Pulse is a great tool to start that going.
Thanks very much, and thanks for being such a champion of it.
Oh, not at all. It's fantastic. So thank you for today.
Thanks.